What's going on, everyone? Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And on today's episode, we've got some interesting NFL topics that we're going to present, a preview and a review of some games. And the first of our two, the first two NBA rebuilds are also going to be on this episode. So I'm looking forward to that. Let me introduce you guys now to the rest of the crew.
What's going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most. It's been a pretty good week. Steelers are 5-0, barring some miracle from Ezekiel Elliott. My fantasy team in the family league is going to be 6-0. So I'm riding high this week, other than Washington biting me in the butt on the lock board a little bit. But I'm excited to talk about the games and try and pull off a miracle in the rebuild with Eric that you guys will see later.
And what's going on, y'all? Eric, your ranting co-host here. My lock board this week sucked. We will be getting to that. Definitely not happy with how that went.
Got to rant on yourself this time.
Yeah, I could definitely rant about my performance. Hopefully this week I'll turn it around, and Connor and I, Knicks fans, Connor and I are going to do our absolute best for you guys. We got you.
That's why I said a miracle.
What's up, guys? Nate here. Had basically, you guys know what I'm going to say each week, but lockboard not too great this week, but looking forward to I got some better ideas coming this week, I think, so should be a fun episode.
I was gonna say, like, you didn't sound very optimistic about the lockboard, but that ending there, wow, we'll see.
Better ideas. Let's see.
Yeah. All right. So as always, guys, we're gonna start around the shield. Got a new picture up for the YouTube. Kind of had a sloppy looking thing earlier, but I forgot we had this alternate logo. We've got the alternate football and basketball logos now for the YouTube viewing. But we've got a couple topics, like I mentioned. We are gonna preview the Steelers and Titans, and then we're gonna talk about tanking, because that's really relevant right now with the Jaguars. And then we're going to go do a review of last week with the Packers and Buccaneers. But we'll start things off first with a preview between the Steelers and Titans. And I'll let Connor, the Steelers fan here on the podcast, give his thoughts on the game first. But I do want to say that all four of us are going to be making score predictions for this game. And if anybody gets the score exactly right, then they get 5 extra lockboard points. So that could definitely help out. That can definitely be a boost for a lot of people, and help me with my lead on the lockboard. So yeah, so be thinking, guys.
Yeah, but Zach's the one that needs help.
I said help me on the lead.
Yeah.
Man, like, you need to help Nate out a little bit rather than helping your lead.
Nate and I need help.
Yeah, that's what I said. It can help make you come back, and it can also help expand the lead. But yeah, so be thinking, maybe roll some dice or something to get to a score number that you like.
What if it comes up like 66? Like,
hey, you know,
gotta do it.
Yeah. But let's hear from Connor first about this game. 2 5-0 teams facing off this week. It was supposed to be a couple weeks ago, but we're getting it now, hopefully. Connor, try and give an unbiased preview of this game, and then you can be biased with your prediction.
Well, yeah, so basically, I mean, this game I will say, going into this year, had you told me that both of these teams would be 5-0 at this point, like they'd be 2 of the remaining ones, I would have thought you were crazy. Like, even with the Steelers, I mean, I had a high opinion of the Steelers, but I did not think we would be 5-0 going to this point. Obviously, the Steelers, they absolutely destroyed the Cleveland Browns 38-7. The defense looked nastier than ever, and it's definitely going to be a tale of two sides, really, because the Steelers, they have a decent offense. I mean, Roethlisberger is showing that he's still got it. He's not performing at an MVP level, but I mean, he doesn't really have to. James Conner's come on in the past couple of weeks. He had 100 yards this past game. Had a decent game the week before too. And Chase Claypool, man, I don't know. I know everybody's been talking about Justin Herbert and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Joe Burrow for Offensive Rookie of the Year. But if Claypool can keep this up, then Claypool's making his case for Rookie of the Year also. But I mean, really, when you talk about the Steelers, it's the defense. They lead, despite having played one less game than their closest competition. They still lead the league in sacks at this point. They're maybe finally starting to get that secondary put together, and probably one of the best, if not the best, run defense in the league on the Steelers at this point. The Titans, obviously, everything runs through Derrick Henry. I mean, Ryan Tannehill's been playing decently, but if they can't get Derrick Henry going, then it's going to be a rough day for them. He had a huge game against Houston, busted off a 94-yard touchdown run, and having AJ Brown back has been big for Ryan Tannehill. I'm not sure. I know Jonnu Smith got hurt in the game against Houston, so if he's not able to go, that's going to take away a big target from Ryan Tannehill. But if I have to give this is still going to sound biased, but I do think the Titans are going to struggle in this game a lot because I know the Steelers are going on the road, which obviously is not as big of a hindrance this year as it has been in past years because there's not a lot of fans. But I will say one thing: the Steelers do play. They play up to their opponents, and they unfortunately play down to their opponents. They've had a couple instances where they'll play really bad teams and they still play down to them, but they play up to big opponents. And one thing that's going to really hurt the Titans in this game, like I said, is the fact that the Steelers probably have one of the best, if not the best, run defenses in the game. And if the Titans can't get Derrick Henry going, Ryan Tannehill's not going to carry them to a victory. And if the Steelers, like I said, it's going to be a defensive struggle in this game because the Titans have a decent defense, not nearly as good as the Steelers, but it's decent. But I think the Titans are going to struggle more in this game because they rely so much on Derrick Henry, whereas the Steelers can get things going they have a multitude of weapons on offense. And I mean, even Ray McCloud, of all people, can run end arounds for the Steelers. So if I have to give a score on this game, it's probably going to be, I would say, it's going to be relatively low scoring, in my opinion, but I would have to go with 24-14. The Steelers win. Hello,
Zach, are you there?
Oh God, I had myself muted. I was talking. I forgot to unmute
I was
myself.
like, did I get disconnected or something? Like, darn, did that whole spiel just go unheard?
Yeah, no, okay. Let me think of what I just said and say that. What I was saying though is we're not writing this down or anything, but we'll go back and I don't know, maybe someone is writing it down, but this episode is being recorded, so we have that on record. 24-14 Steelers is what Connor said. I will go back to being unmuted and I'll let Nate give his preview and his take of how this game will go.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one I'm really excited for outside of, my Pats games. I haven't really been looking forward to too many matchups, so I'm definitely interested to see how this one goes. I think it's going to be interesting, especially after this last week's games. We saw obviously what the performance that Derrick Henry had. He just went crazy again. I thought personally that they would have a drop off this year, the Titans, but he looks just like where he left off last season. So I think it's going to be a real test for the Steelers. I mean, they've played some decent teams to this point, but I think this is a very solid test for their defense. See if they can stop or at least slow down a guy like Henry and, force Tannehill to get into throwing like what we saw happen in the playoffs last year. So, yeah, that's an interesting one for me. I think definitely the Steelers will put up their points, especially like what Connor said about Claypool. I think that passing game is starting to get going, and I think this is looking to be more of potentially an offensive game, in my opinion. I think if I had to guess a final score, I think obviously we're going to go back and do this again, say all of our scores, but I think my pick would have to be like 27-24 Steelers.
All right, so that's 27-24 Steelers is what Nate's predicting. So a close game. Eric, let's hear from you now on this game.
Yeah, I think Connor and Nate brought up a lot of great points. And the only thing I can really think of to add to this that they didn't bring up, I feel like while the Titans are 5-0, maybe this is just a Jags fan in me here, and a Titans hater, but I feel like they're a very lucky team to be 5-0. I mean, because they struggled to beat the Broncos. There were some questionable calls in the game against the Jags, and the Jags almost beat them. And we can see how amazing the Jags have been since that game. So that I wouldn't really argue. Yeah, I would argue that both of those wins were not really that impressive. Now, their win against the Bills, that was a great win. That was dominant. But then it seemed like they got lucky again against the Texans with them making that bonehead move to go for 2 when they were up by 7 and all that. And it just seemed like that was really costly for them.
And they got the coin toss.
Yeah, and they got the coin toss in overtime. So maybe the Texans offense was clicking in that game. So maybe if the Texans had won the coin toss, they would have won. So I don't know. I feel like the Titans overall are very lucky to be 5-0, whereas the Steelers have been impressive the whole season so far. So I feel like the Steelers will win this game, and I actually think it's going to be fairly easily. I'm going to say Pittsburgh 31-17.
Okay, 31-17 Pittsburgh, and I'm going to make it 4 picks for Pittsburgh. I'm going to pick the Steelers to win. Eric brought up a lot of good things that I was going to talk about, how the Titans and Connor's biased pro Steelers. Eric and I are biased anti Titans.
Pretty much.
So what you're saying is Nate's the only unbiased voice
Yeah,
on
Nate,
here.
Nate. When Nate was talking, that was the only bias there. But no, I've watched the Titans and the Steelers this year, and honestly, both of them have had their struggles. But when it comes to the matchups, Steelers offense versus Titans defense is where I have the biggest mismatch. And I just don't think the Titans defense is that good at all. The Titans offense going against the Steelers defense is going to be a battle, but I'm giving the edge to the Steelers defense. I'm going to say the Titans, they will end up scoring because scoring is up with every team in the NFL this year, basically, unless you're the Jets. So and Vrabel's the kind of coach, so I'm going to go into the reason of why I'm going to say the score is the score. Vrabel's the kind of coach that likes to go for it a lot on 4th down. They have a shaky kicker from earlier in the year, so I'm going to say the Titans get 4 touchdowns actually. So I don't think the Titans offense is going to be why they lose. I'm going to say the Titans score 28, but the defense is going to let Big Ben control the game. And I'm going to say the Steelers get 38. So I'm going to say 38-28 Pittsburgh.
Opposite end of the spectrum from I got defensive struggles. Zach's got a shootout going.
Yeah, it's funny. We picked as Connor went, then Nate, then Eric, then myself. We all got it went going up and up in the points. That was interesting. But yeah, so that's our analysis. But hey, I mean the Titans. I'm shocked they're 5-0. 6-0. That'd be something crazy.
I thought you were going to mention something about how obviously you've been so big on the Browns all year after like what happened in that.
Oh yeah, that was another thing that was shocking me. The Steelers, how they beat down on the Browns so badly. That was another thing that was tipping the favor, because honestly, up to that point, the Steelers hadn't really played anybody great. They had the Giants week 1. Broncos, yeah. So they've had some easy
Eagles.
Yeah. So, but that win against the Browns, it was at home. They got to go on the road here, but like you said, the road home thing doesn't mean as much this year. But all right, guys. So you heard our score predictions there for that game, but now we want to turn it over to a much more depressing topic. So we were just talking about 5-0 teams. Now we gotta sigh and talk about tanking. So for anybody who doesn't know, I'll just say the basic. Basically, the basic of tanking is when you have a bad team and you want to secure the best draft pick in the next year's draft, that is tanking is basically the act of trying to lose, which is really just trying not to win. And the players don't tank. We know that they're trying to fight for their jobs. They're trying to fight even if they're not going to make it back on this team. They're trying to get a contract from another team, and they're trying to put their best gameplay on tape for future evaluators. So there's never any case where there's a player that's going to purposely drop a pass just so the team loses and they get a better draft pick. That's never going to happen. But tanking is when executives make decisions. Like in my eyes, when Washington benched Dwayne Haskins, to me that was like a tanking move because I think Haskins is their best quarterback, and they chose to make him third string on their team. To me, that's a tanking move. It'd be like if the Jaguars were to bench Minshew and put in what's that guy, Mike Glennon, as their starting. That would be a tanking move. And then there's other more subtle ways other than just quarterbacks that you can do stuff like that. Trading away your best players, giving your star players more rest. Maybe if they're hurt, maybe you don't rush them back from injury like you normally would have. Maybe you'd be like, okay, let's just take the year off with your nagging injury. These are the subtle ways of tanking. And the real question is fans. Fans are divided on this. We'll probably be divided as a podcast on this. But where do you stand as a fan for your team? Let's say in the situation of Jacksonville, where do you stand as a fan? And I'll go first with my talk, and then I'll be interested to hear what Eric says. But here's where I stand with tanking, guys, is I'm not for it. And I would like to get Trevor Lawrence in the draft, but the problem is when you look at teams that get the number one overall draft pick, you have to go all the way back to Eli Manning as the last number one overall pick in the draft to win a Super Bowl as a quarterback. Eric Fisher was an offensive tackle drafted in 2013. He won the Super Bowl just recently, but we all know why they won the Super Bowl because of Mahomes. So, but all the other quarterbacks.
No, it was totally him. It was totally Eric Fisher.
But every quarterback that's gone first overall since Eli Manning in the 2004 draft, none of them have won a Super Bowl. And there's some young ones who it's too early to tell will they win one, like Burrow and Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. Some of the more recent ones, it's like, okay, the jury's still out on that. But the fact is it's definitely not a guarantee. And the odds say it's actually rare that happens. While I do think Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback in the draft, I think if the Jaguars do end up going 1-15, I think that's such a bad standard to set. And I look at the Dolphins of last year as the perfect case why not to tank. I've actually got a picture here on YouTube of this lovely Dolphins fan saying, "Stop tanking." And I agree with her. And let's look at the Dolphins as a case example. They ended up with the number 5 overall pick in the draft, which is actually where the Jags currently are. And they got a quarterback. Jags might be able to get a quarterback at 5 or trade up. And they ended the season strong, and they're starting this year off pretty strong. They're 500 right now, 3-3. The teams that picked before the Dolphins got quarterbacks, they were looking like they're going to be pretty good in the future, like Cincinnati with Burrow and Herbert with the Chargers. So they're feeling good about themselves too. But the Dolphins have to be feeling great because they've starting to establish a winning culture. The Cleveland Browns from a couple years ago, they did not establish a winning culture since they've drafted Baker Mayfield. The Colts, when they drafted Luck, they had a couple years of success, but it wasn't for a long time. And there's been some busts in between the Manning draft to now. So just getting the number 1 overall pick doesn't guarantee you a Super Bowl like everybody thinks it will. And I would rather my team win a couple more games than just go 1 win or 0 wins or 2 wins. I want to get much wins as possible. And another thing too about tanking that I have to say is, every game I go into watching as a Jags fan, I root for them to win. I do not root for them to lose, even if it affects the draft order. With other teams, yeah, of course I want the Rams to lose. I want the Vikings to lose. But
you want that early pick.
yeah, you want that because that's not going to affect you. But I just don't like it when teams try and lose. I think it's very hard to reverse that trend of losing. Um, and there's no guarantees about anything. So just saying, "Oh, let's just throw the season in, let's just tank and try and lose to get Trevor Lawrence and then we're going to be saved. We're just going to be like a miracle. We're just going to be saved." I just don't think that's how it works usually. And I know Trevor Lawrence is like supposed to be a really good prospect and everything, but you never know what's going to happen. And like I feel like I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, so I'll stop. But to me, you got to try and win as many as you can, even if it affects your draft status. Um, I would like to see the coaches and management go, but still, I want I want the players to get the taste of winning. I don't want one win in September to be the only win that our 16 rookies on this team feel. I think that's a really bad way to start off your career when you win one game or zero games. But Eric, maybe you have a different opinion than me on this, but I'm not a fan of tanking. What about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement here with you. I think the concept of tanking is terrible. I don't think any team should ever do that. And like you said too, the players aren't going to tank. The coaches aren't going to tank. They're fighting for their jobs. But I just have to wonder, in a way, though, if like Dave Caldwell tanked with the Jags this year, because I don't know, man. I've kind of talked about this before, but I feel like they've said that that Shad Khan put pressure on them to win now, and they have to win now or there's going to be consequences and all this stuff. But I mean, if I was the GM of the Jacksonville Jaguars going into last off season and I was told that, a lot of the players that they got rid of, like, I'm not getting rid of. Like, obviously, Yannick Ngakoue wanted out. They pretty much had to trade him. But I would have kept Calais Campbell on the team. I would have kept Leonard Fournette on the team. Boye probably would have traded. He was starting to struggle. But at the same time, we don't have any corners, really. I would not have traded Ronnie Harrison because if anybody's watched even a minute of a Jags game this year, you can see how bad our safeties are. We have horrible depth at that position. And a lot of these guys that they traded or got rid of, they got scraps for. They didn't even really get anything in return. So I kind of think that the Jaguars management has chosen to tank because, as I've said in previous episodes too, I feel like they know their jobs are safe. They if they were really pressured to win now, they would not have gutted the whole team like that. That's something you don't do when you have to win now. So I kind of think they were trying to set up for the future by letting everybody go, and a lot of them being let go for nothing or barely anything. But the main reason why I hate tanking, though, is just because Zach kind of alluded to it, but it sets up a losing culture in the locker room, and that's the last thing you want. And unfortunately, I feel like that's what's happened with the Jags, dating all the way back to when Gus Bradley was hired as the coach. It was almost like, well, guys, it's okay if we lose as long as we try to get better.
As long as we have fun, guys.
Effort. It's effort.
It's like, yeah, as long as we're trying really hard, that's the key. And when Gus Bradley first came in, I was all excited.
The key to your lock?
Yeah, exactly. I was excited when he first came in with that mentality because at the time we really sucked. I mean, we had nobody on the team. And so, like, literally Maurice Jones-Drew and Paul Posluszny were the only players that anybody outside of Jacksonville had heard of. So I was okay with it at the time because I'm like, yeah, we suck right now, but you get better, try hard. And then once we got more talent, I'm like, okay, now it needs to be, we got to win. We got to start winning. We've got some talent. We got to start winning. But it was still the same thing. Oh, give it your all, guys.
Next year.
You just knocked a guy out of bounds for a 15-yard penalty. Well, you were trying though, so good job. Or you missed that extra point, Jason Myers.
Garrett would have done wonders for you guys as the coach with his
like,
clapping.
yeah. Jason Myers, you missed that 25-yard
he's
field
basically
goal.
Jason Myers. Yeah, Jason Garrett. Yeah, he basically was.
He was a more hyped version of Jason Garrett. Yeah, but
more animated.
Yeah, and so even when we started to get talent, we still weren't focusing on winning. It was still a losing culture. And then even now with Doug Marrone, it's like I don't even know what's going on. But honestly, it's been so depressing watching Jaguars football these last few weeks. Like after we beat the Colts, I was all excited, and then I watched the Titans game. We almost won that. I was like, okay, I got, we still have reason for optimism. But then after that Miami game, it's just gone so downhill for me. Like I watched that game, it sucked. And then just every game since then, I've just looked at the score, like while I was at work. Okay, let me just look at the score. If we win or it's close or something, I'll watch it later on Game Pass. But if not, whatever. And then I saw we were losing to the Lions 34-10 in the fourth quarter. I was like, I'm not even going to watch this game. Like I just couldn't even muster up the energy to do it. And it's feels
bad.
like
It's bad for your health to watch that. Like really,
it is
bad for your mental health.
But that's the thing. It's like we've literally in the last full decade have had one winning season. I mean, I just feel like,
and yet y'all somehow always figure out how to beat us.
Yeah, that's true. But but most of the times when we have beat you, it's been like the one time we play y'all, it's when we do have a good team, like when we had David Garrard and MJD and all them, or when we've had like Ramsey and Miles Jack.
Bortles, like best year.
Yeah, the 1 year Bortles was good, like we ain't beating the Steelers this year. That's you can take that to the bank. But anyway, like I hate the concept of tanking. I'm like Zach. I'd rather win a few games, establish a winning culture. You'll still be able to bring in talent the next year regardless. So even if you don't get the number one overall best player, like you're still going to be able to get some good players. I would have rather just seen our team be decent this year and Minshew end up being the guy, but it doesn't look like that's happening. But so I don't know, man. It just I hate talking about the Jags.
Right, yeah. Eric, you just cool down a little bit.
Yeah,
let's hear from
pass
Connor
the mic
and Nate.
over.
Pass the mic over to Connor and Nate, non-Jags fans. So trying to imagine yourself in the situation Eric and I are in, and how you would react.
Well, I mean, I will say this about tanking in my mind is that I think that the fans and social media have honestly overhyped and overdone the idea of tanking, because in my opinion, like I don't condone gutting people for no reason and having a like we suck this year, so we're just gonna accept that
a guy gets like normally like a 3-week injury, but he's out for 10 weeks, like
right something like that. I mean, like if you're in a situation where you're like at the end of the season and like you're not gonna make the playoffs, then like that's fine, because like especially if it's someone who's really good. Like I know the Packers have done that with Aaron Rodgers before, war like they'll be down to like the last 2 weeks of the season and he like could come back, but it's like, okay, we're 5-8 or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like there's no way we're making the playoffs. So, we're just going to bench him because there's no point in risking him being hurt. But yeah, if it's like week 3 and you like, sprain your ankle or something and it takes like 6 weeks for you, like, and not a high ankle sprain, but just like a regular ankle sprain, and it takes you like 6 weeks to come back. Like that's ridiculous. But like I said, the way I think it's been overhyped, because in my mind, some of the things that would classify as tanking, in my mind, aren't really as bad. Because I think if you have a situation where you've got a really good player, but maybe they are, or players, this can be plural, if they are, a cancer in the locker room, kind of like Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown were, or, they've got really bad contracts. Like, maybe they've been like decent, but they haven't played up to the level of that contract. And like, the rest of your team is kind of mediocre. I'm not against getting rid of them, especially if they're cancers in the locker room. getting rid of them for less than maybe what they're worth, just because I feel like sometimes it's good to have a reset. And I mean, I think that's kind of the same way a little bit like with the NBA too, like getting rid of really bad contracts if you can, even if it means you're not really getting that much in return, it can really set you up for the next season and, really put you in a better position. Now, having a losing culture sucks, but, I do think there are times when, um, I think like I said, I think this is where the fans they're like, oh well, you're tanking and this season's already over, so you might as well not even try. I think that's really where a lot of the losing culture comes from because honestly, like you said, unless it's some coach like Gus Bradley or Jason Garrett, like you guys said, the players aren't going to quit, the coaches aren't going to quit. Like they want to win. Like even with all the fans in Miami, obviously Zach has the picture of the lady with the "Stop Tanking" sign,
Yeah.
but most of the fans in Miami probably didn't want that. Like they were still out there rooting for the Dolphins to win. Who knows? I mean, my dad's a good example. He's the eternal optimist with the Buffalo Bills. Like they could be like a 1-6 team, and they'll be going into a game against let's say the Patriots, like last season with Brady and everything, and he'd still have a thought he'd be realistic about it. But he'd still have
he's
a
not
thought
going
of
to bet his life savings on it.
right. But he'd still have a thought all right, we can win this game if things go our way. We have a chance. And like I said, I think that's the way most of the fans were. But you just have the loudmouths, which are the ones that speak out louder, that are like, oh well, we should just tank and get tank for Trevor, or tank for Tua, all those things. So, so I guess I'm kind of in the middle on this one. There's things about tanking that I, think are okay, that I would be okay with, but there's other things that I'm like I said, with the fans and also the whole losing culture thing. Those things are bad in my opinion.
All right, Nate, let's hear from you. Your team might be in the considered tanking boat after the past couple of weeks, but how do you feel about it?
Yeah,
the tank for Trevor thing, the where do you stand with this?
Yeah, I'll keep it short because I definitely agree with most of pretty much everything you guys said. I'm definitely in the anti-tanking boat. I think, especially in the NFL, at least in the NBA, you can kind of see the justification where, if you are one of the worst teams and you win the lottery and you got a guy like, LeBron or even like a Zion Williamson or John Morant coming along that can definitely instantly take over your team, that's one thing. But I think even in the NFL, a tank for a guy like Trevor Lawrence, if you're the Jets, oh great, you got Trevor Lawrence, but literally everyone else on your team, on your roster is awful. So what's who's he gonna throw to? Who's he gonna
Why
block
hasn't
for?
he been
So
fired yet?
yeah, yeah, it's you're gonna have either Adam Gase or some other unknown person coaching him. So it's not even to me worth the effort, I think, to go through it in the NFL. Because what Zach said, there hasn't been a number one overall pick who's won a Super Bowl since Eli Manning, and it's there's no guarantee whatsoever that even getting one of the top 3 picks is gonna set you up for future success. And on top of that, just the whole attitude of tanking. I don't know if it's never been confirmed which teams are actually tanking. It's, we kind of can maybe tell as fans, but it's it's kind of what you guys were saying about the Jags too. It's it's a bad culture thing. If you guys come into work and you're not trying to actively win every single game, those players are going to come back next year, the ones that they keep around, and they're not going to have a culture of winning.
They're going to think losing is okay. They're going to be acceptable.
Yeah.
Everybody's a winner, guys. You participated.
I'm glad you guys all feel like me, because I was like Connor said, the loudmouths on Twitter, you see that a lot. So I was thinking, okay, maybe some of you guys are gonna be like, yeah, let's just suck this season and then next year we'll be in the Super Bowl. That's not how it works usually.
Moneyball tends to not work.
Let's go real quick to talk about the game of the week. I'm hearing an echo. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm hearing one too.
I am too.
I'm not hearing an echo. Is it
Must be Eric then?
Let me mute my mic.
Okay. So the game of the week: Green Bay at Tampa Bay, Battle of the Bays, as they call it on TV. Tampa won this. Tampa won this easily, 38-10, and it was basically over midway through the third quarter. Green Bay was lifeless on offense. Tampa, their defense, man, that's something. That defense is something else. They're, I think, the best or second best defense in the NFC right now. Um, you saw even this is what
I
surprised
think
me.
it's between like them, the Ravens, and the Steelers for like best
Yeah,
defense in the league right now.
yeah. For the for the NFC, I think it's between like them and the Bears maybe. But
Yeah.
but yeah, the we saw, and I was honestly surprised with the way the defense was against the run without Vita Vea, but it was just next man up, and they did pretty good against the run. But really, it was the pass rush that made the secondary come up with all those big interceptions, and they even missed some interceptions. Some went through guys' hands. So Tampa, to me, gets 10 out of 10 on the defense. And then on the offensive side, two things actually there was three things that really impressed me at Tampa. One, Brady's accuracy was back. We saw that. We saw him throw a deep ball that was pretty accurate. It got a pass interference that set him up on the 1 yard line. They scored. Secondly, Ronald Jones had another back-to-back 100-yard game. He's been a real surprise to me. I expected Brady to be accurate, and last week he wasn't that good, but he's Brady stepped back this week. Ronald Jones has quietly been a good running back this season for Tampa. And then
he's on my fantasy team. Thank you, Ronald Jones.
And then finally, the thing that surprised me, but obviously this won't happen again, is no penalties. They had a penalty. Ndamukong Suh had a dumb late hit penalty, but it got canceled with the Green Bay penalty. But other than that, no penalties for Tampa Bay, which they up until that point they had been notoriously bad with getting penalties, and it literally cost them that Chicago game. When they had like a 3rd and 30, and then you can't get in 3rd and 30s in the NFL no matter who you're playing. So yeah, the Buccaneers shined in every way in this game, and then with Green Bay, I think they really got exposed for who they really are, which is beating bad teams but not winning the game. And if I want to compare this to something, I'm going to compare this to like the Green Bay San Francisco game last year in the regular season. This is really what that reminded me of, and I think these two could meet in the playoffs later again. Tampa has the tiebreaker now with for home field if it gets to that. But yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers had one of his worst games ever. He'd been doing great up to that point, so I'm not going to say like, okay, now Aaron Rodgers is done. I'm not saying bring in Jordan Love or anything like that, but man, the Tampa Bay defense fooled him a lot. He had a delay of game one time. He looked kind of confused, kind of like Brady last week with the 4th down thing. Is what that reminded me of. Like not looking at the play clock, throwing the interceptions. Could have been 4 interceptions, really. So those are my takeaways. This, to me, though, was a statement game. It wasn't like the Buccaneers won on a field goal late in the game or something little chippy happened and Tampa won. Like this was a beatdown, and I think if these two teams meet again, this could be like a San Francisco Green Bay situation like last year. But Nate, I know you also watched the game, so I'll let you fill in anything I missed. Were you maybe more impressed with Tampa or let down with Green Bay because you picked Green Bay to win this?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely hit on most of the things. I would say I was more disappointed with Green Bay. I mean, I knew Tampa would come out, and I thought Brady looked good all year, and especially getting some more, on the same page with his guys and getting people healthy. I knew they would come out and look good offensively, but I was surprised. Like you said, Aaron Rodgers had one of his worst games that I can remember in recent years, and just didn't look good at all. So I was more surprised that he came out flat. And I know Tampa has a pretty solid defense, but I expected, at least this game to be competitive, and definitely wasn't. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Green Bay does going forward. And yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's hear real quick, Eric. I'm gonna skip you, but I want to hear from the most notorious Tampa Bay critic on the show, Connor. And Heard you got to
Goodness
say
gracious.
that.
Have a reputation here. But yeah, I mean, I definitely am with Nate that I'm more on the side of I was surprised at how flat Green Bay came out just because of how dominant they had been over the first few weeks. I think the main thing for me with Tampa is that, I mean, they had proved to me from week one that their defense was good. I mean, looking at how they played against New Orleans and everything, like that's never been a question for me this year. It's just I need to see the offense. I mean, like I want to see them have 2 back-to-back games where they're good because their wins this year have come against, they had 1 week where they beat Denver, and then they had another game where I can't remember who they played. Carolina, like another like pretty bad team. So in my mind, and then they came out and looked. I know they were missing Chris Godwin and Vita Vea, but like Mike Evans was healthy. And they were missing OJ Howard too, but like Mike Evans was healthy, Gronk was healthy, Ronald Jones was healthy, all these other people that were healthy on the offense, and they looked horrible against Chicago. I mean, they had some bad penalties, but they looked horrible against Chicago, which even though they're 5-1, I'm still questioning. Like they're shaping up to be Green Bay of last year. Like I swear they're going to somehow go 12-4 and be like the worst 12-4 team. So I need to see another, like if they do really good against the Raiders again this week, then I'll start to believe in them more. Mm-hmm. But I was just really surprised at how bad Green Bay was in that game after how they had been coming into that game.
Yeah. And speaking of how bad Green Bay was, let's talk about how bad Eric's lockboard was last week. I had to do that transition.
Good God.
Here.
That was set up to me, and it just clicked in my brain. I was like, I have to transition like that. But man, sorry for stabbing you in the back there, Eric. But
Sucks.
Yeah. So this week's lockboard, it really wasn't great for anybody. But Connor finished with 4 points. Nate got 3. I got 6, and Eric with the 0s. So we've had back-to-back weeks of someone getting 0. Hope I'm not the next one for maybe gloating right there. But yeah, so I'm back in the winner's seat this week with 6 points. I was surprised. I didn't know if 6 would be enough to win it for me this week with some people picking 5-pointers, but it ended up being enough for me to win the week, which I'm happy about. My correct picks were Tampa over Green Bay, like we just talked about, and South Carolina over Auburn. That was a college game that I saw had potential for an upset and got it right. So those were my 2 out of 3 that I got right. And looking now at the total standings, I now broke the tie and I'm in first place with 32. Connor's in second with 30. Eric in third with 22. 10 behind the leader, and Nate in fourth with 12, 28 points behind the leader. So that's where things stand right now. And based off of last week's standings and based off of Eric's 0 point, I gift you, Eric, the first pick in the draft.
Look, I have to say, man, it's not like, it's not my fault that Houston's coach decided to go for it or go for 2 when they were up by 7. Okay, that would have at least got me some points.
Is Bill O'Brien back?
And it's also not my fault that Georgia's quarterback looks like Mitch Trubisky Jr. out there. Okay, so you can't. I don't know. Anyway, so to get things started here, since I had the first pick, I already knew what I was going to do. I'm going to go for a 5-pointer here to get really aggressive to start, and I'm going to take you're welcome, Jackson. I'm taking the Carolina Panthers to beat the New Orleans Saints for 5 points.
I figured that'd be gone, but yeah.
Yeah, I was considering that one, actually.
I feel like Drew Brees hasn't been his best this year, and I know Carolina lost last week, but they've been a lot more impressive than people thought they were going to be, so I feel like this is a 5-point game that has a realistic chance of happening, so that's why I picked the Panthers.
All right, Nate, you ready with yours?
I am indeed. I'm gonna go over to college this time. I've been burnt there in the past. I don't think I haven't got any points there yet, but I'm gonna go with Iowa State over Oklahoma State for, what's that, 1 point?
That's 3. Is it?
Or 3 points. 3 points, right.
Iowa State over Oklahoma State.
Yeah, that's 3
that's
points.
3-pointer. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Well, I guess if I'm going to continue Zach's trend of beating up on people, Nate's talking about how the college has burned him. Unfortunately, pretty much everything has burned you so far this year. But
Jesus.
Yeah.
Zach and
That is
Connor
true.
are, like, firing shots tonight.
Hey, that's what you can do when you're at the top of the leaderboard, man.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I'm very very happy and privileged to be back where I belong in the draft in the 3rd and 4th round, or 3rd and 4th pick. So I disappointed myself.
It's good to see you back. It's good to see you back here.
Yeah, I know. I'm disappointed with myself for falling out of that last time, but all right. I think my first pick. I've got this one down. I have my eye on a couple, but I am going to take the 49ers to beat the New England Patriots.
Ooh, I didn't see that one. Okay, yeah,
Ooh.
so that's 3-point play. Yeah,
I was looking at that one.
I can see that. All right, so I'm gonna pick here with the last pick in the first round. I'm gonna go to college, and I'm gonna pick the road underdog Cincinnati to beat SMU. I think Cincinnati is really trying their hardest to like maybe sneak in the college football playoff potentially with an undefeated season. I don't know, but this is gonna be a tough task for sure at SMU. But I'll take the potential 3 points there. Eric, we're starting the second round now. Are you ready with your pick?
I am. Yeah, when you said you were going to college and picking a road team, I was getting really nervous that you were taking the one I was looking at. I would have never thought going into this season that I would have made this pick, but here I am, and I'm picking South Carolina to beat LSU.
Oh, that's not the one I thought you were going to do.
I was eyeballing that. Yeah, I should have gone that in the first round.
No, that's actually not what I thought you were going to do. I guess I'll tell you what I thought you were going to do later, but
okay. All right, I'll be curious there as to which one you thought I was going to pick. But yeah. So,
all right, Nate, are you going to go back to college again too? Even though you're
I was going to. I was actually looking at the South Carolina. I was in that South Carolina one. I did. I got sniped. But I think I'm gonna go over to the NFL this time, and I'm gonna take Cincinnati over Cleveland.
Ooh. I was looking at that one.
Not the way Joe Burrows looked, and
not the one I was gonna pick, but it looked pretty good.
The way that Cleveland got
the home dog there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think I'm trying. Like, I've got 2 picks in my mind. I've got one college and one NFL. I'm trying to think which one I want to go first, but I think I want to get the NFL one out of the way since it's more likely it's a lower point value. So I'm going to take. I guess I have to keep up my reputation of being the Buccaneers critic. I'm going to take the Raiders to beat the Buccaneers.
Yeah, that's going to be a close game in my opinion. So definitely could be something there. All right, so I've got the last pick here in the second round, and there's a lot of new college games, Big Ten going on here, but I'm gonna go for the 5-point. I'm gonna swing for the fences. I'm gonna say Pitt beats Notre Dame.
Oh, you suck. I should have taken that one first.
Night, boys.
I was like, should I take that one first or should I do the NFL one first?
Yeah, Notre Dame, like, to me, every year they get.
Oh, they were terrible in that game against Louisville, though. Like,
yeah,
12-7. Like, come on, man. When you're the number 3 team in the nation,
it's serious. And like you were talking, I re-listened last episode. Nate was like, or Connor was like, one of you guys, Pitt's due for an upset every year. And
I said Nate had experience with that when he picked them to beat.
Well, it didn't.
Miami.
Yeah, it didn't happen with Miami, but hey, Pitt's at home. Let me go with the home dog here. But okay, that round's the second. That finishes the second round with a snipe. Eric, starting the third. Where are you gonna go, man?
All right. So last week I did not take a safe pick, and after everything that happened, I was wishing I did. So this week I will take a safe pick. I'm going to take the Bills to beat the Jets.
Yeah, nothing. Can't
That's
go
gonna
wrong with that
be-
one.
If I don't get that point, I might just have to give up on the lockboard, honestly.
All right, Nate. Nate.
Wait, is Nate?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there we go. I think I was debating if I want to do another upset or go with a little bit of a short thing to at least get 1 point this week. And I think I'm gonna do that just because it's better for my my overall self-confidence. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna take which one's I looking at? Um, I'm going to take Kansas City over Denver.
Okay,
All right.
definitely
safe picks.
safe for the NFL.
Pretty solid about that.
Connor, I can't snipe you anymore, so this is your last pick.
Yeah,
here.
right.
Don't
Well,
don't blame me.
well, normally I'm kind of the I don't know what the word is, but the connoisseur of safe picks. I've made one every week just because I feel like they're important, but I am gonna break with tradition this time around mainly because Zach sniped my Notre Dame or Pittsburgh over Notre Dame pick, but I did have another 5-point college upset in my mind. So with that being said, I'm going to take Wake Forest to beat Virginia Tech.
Ooh. Got see. I'm not an ACC connoisseur. Maybe you know something I don't about Wake Forest being in North Carolina.
Yeah, I took Boston College to beat Virginia Tech last week, and that didn't do anything for me.
Well, I'm gonna stick to my my roots of the SEC here with the final pick, and I picked against them last week for 3 points, and I got it. I'm gonna do the same thing again. Give me Ole Miss over Auburn. So
I was considering that, but I wanted a 5-pointer.
yeah, that'll be a 3-pointer potential for me. So that's gonna finish the draft there. I'll leave it on the screen for a second.
Well, I guess I'll say what I thought Eric was going to do because
okay, yeah.
I guess in my head I should have remembered that you said I'm going with the Road Warrior here, but like I kind of blanked that out of my head because when you said I didn't think I would pick this before, I thought you were actually going to take Tennessee to beat Alabama.
Oh, dude, if I were to hit that game, I should get 20 points if I get that one.
Like 21. So we'll give you 21.
Yeah, seriously, man.
I thought you were gonna pick Bama over Tennessee for your safe pick, actually.
No, I felt like there were other. I mean, honestly, I was debating Bama over Tennessee, and I was debating Chargers over Jags. But
yeah,
I was like, I can't go against my teams like that.
You can't go wrong with taking whoever's playing the Jets. So
Bills over Jets is pretty safe. I was like, I'm going with that.
Yeah, really, seriously. Okay, guys. So this is the second half of our newly designed intro slides for the basketball segment called.
We ain't got no bubble no more, so
yeah, no bubble. So I had to change that, and
yeah,
I'm a big fan of our secondary basketball logo. Actually, I'm a fan of this. But we're not here to talk about logos that I made a year ago. We're here to talk about the.
But trust me, I remember those original logos that you pitched to me.
Yeah, we went over that in the what was it, I think that was
the 1 year episode or the 100th. We went over that.
It was the 50th Q&A we showed.
Oh
yeah. Those are funny. Go back and watch that and see what those look like. But like I said, we're going to be doing some of these GM rebuilds. We're going to do 2 teams every week, and we're starting off the first week here. I'm going to be talking about my Orlando Magic, and then Eric and Connor are going to co-GM for the New York Knicks. They'll try and do the best they can. And then after we're
get your hopes up, Knicks fans.
Yeah. So after I'm done playing GM here, Eric and Connor will grade how I did and see if they like it or not. And then Nate and I will do the same thing with the Knicks. And then next week we'll be back with 2 more teams. And Eric's got his Thunder to talk about next week. So that'll be fun to listen to see how he feels about them. Probably going to be a rant, honestly. Okay, so let me get started here with the Magic. As a GM for this season, the first thing I'm looking at is free agency, and Evan Fournier has a player option. I'm hoping he doesn't sign. Fournier has had his ups and downs with the Magic. He's a three-point shooter. Basically, that's all he does. But I mean, he'll go for like 25 one game, and then he'll go for like 2 the next game. Very inconsistent. I haven't been a big fan of him for the past couple of years. Neither are Magic fans. So by default, if he comes back, he's going to end up being our starter at shooting guard next year. But he's got a player option for like 17 million, so I'm guessing he takes that.
That'd be along the same lines as Nicholas Batum refusing his.
No, it wouldn't be that bad, but
well, not that bad, but
yeah, yeah. But the next biggest free agent is DJ Augustine, and I am so torn about this because it's got to be for the right price, obviously. But I would love to have DJ Augustine back. But the thing is I want to transition more to Fultz. So even if we're able to bring back Augustine, which I think we can if we want to, I'm going to make that a priority, but it's not priority number one. But I want him to be the backup point guard because, quite honestly, he'd be one of the better backup point guards in the NBA. And Fultz has got to become the starting point guard next year. And he's got to take over more minutes in the rotation. And Augustine's getting up there in age, see that 32. So Augustine's been on the team for a while now. I want him to come back. MCW, Michael Carter Williams, not going to bring him back. James Ennis, though, has a player option. If he comes back, he's our starter at small forward next year. So I hope he comes back. But if not, we'll replace him with someone of his caliber in free agency. But he played really well in the bubble. So I hope he takes that player option. Probably not, though, with $2 million. He probably goes to free agency. That's tough to say with him, though. I don't know. This is the thing with the Magic is there's a lot of unknowns with the player options. I think Fournier takes, but Ennis, I really don't know. But want him to come back. If not, I'd bring back Wes Iwundu. He's been on the team for a couple of years, kind of a gritty defender. But getting to the weaknesses now of the team here is going to be small forward because Jonathan Isaac is going to be gone for the season. And let me go through the starting five now with what I think, and I've got it written down here so I don't have to memorize it. But I've got Fultz starting at point guard next season. I've got Fournier starting at shooting guard. I've got either Ennis or a free agent at small forward, and then Gordon and Vucevic as the starters. And this is the year where we're expecting to make the playoffs, but we're really looking for growth between Fultz, Bamba, and Okiki. Chuma Okiki was our first-round draft pick from last season. Played really well at Auburn. A lot of people consider him like maybe the steal of the draft because he had an injury, but he's rehabbed. He'll be back for next season. And Chuma Okiki is someone that's got to step up for us. He has to be in our long-term future. So while he's not going to be starting next year, I want to see him progress. I want to see Fultz progress. Former number 1 overall pick, Markelle Fultz. Aaron Gordon, I think we know what his ceiling is, and it's not great. It's honestly, I would like to do better, which is why I'd like to have Okiki replace Gordon in the future. And I want to see Bamba excel, and I want to see Bamba healthy. If Bamba is healthy, we get a chance to evaluate him, and if he is what we hope he is, then that means that we're going to be trading Vucevic the next season. And that's going to bring a lot in return. There's going to be some contending team that's feels like they're a center away, and we're going to get a lot of draft picks from that trade. So if Vucevic, he's meant so much to the team. He has a lot of records for the Magic, but obviously he's going to be starting next year at the 5. But I don't see Vooch in the long-term plans for this team, with the hope that Bamba is the future. And Terrence Ross is the 6th man, obviously. He's used to coming off the bench, a big-time three-point shooter, but he comes off the bench. So that's another thing, is now we got to replace Fournier, because Fournier's got the player option, then he's done. And like I said, I don't think he comes back to the Magic. after that contract is up. So that brings us to this year's draft. We've got to get a shooting guard. Ross is not good enough to be the starting shooting guard, but he's great off the bench. So I want to keep Ross on the team coming off the bench at shooting guard, but we need to definitely draft a guard. It could be a point guard. It's positionless basketball now, so you can draft a point guard, maybe a taller point guard that's less ball dependent, and have him be the shooting guard of the future. And then this will hopefully be the future team is going to be Fultz at the point guard, that draft pick that we get this year at shooting guard, and then Jonathan Isaac, when he comes back, might be the best player on this team because he was playing really good basketball till he got hurt. Tremendous defensive player. This team has a lot of defensive studs on it, other than really Fultz, and we don't know what will happen be with the draft pick. But Isaac as a wing defender is going to be great. His offense has gone up each year, and Okeke I'm really excited to see. I'm excited to see how Okeke does, and he's hopefully going to be the future at power forward. By the way, too, we're going to get some stuff in return for Vooch, so we're going to have some more bench players once we trade Vooch, and then hopefully Bamba is the center of the future. That's what I want to see. Bamba is the center of the future. This starting five with that draft pick to be determined. But I'm not really looking at free agency to bring in any big free agents this year. If James Ennis comes back, I'm fine with James Ennis starting at small forward next year, because Isaac's going to be that long-term small forward. And there's Aaron Gordon is the big question mark. Is he going to take that next step? And if not, Okeke's going to replace him in the future because there's more potential with Okeke, in my opinion. But Gordon's a great player to have coming off the bench. So if you have Gordon, Terrence Ross coming off the bench, and whatever we get back in the Vucevic hole, draft picks and players, prospects, that's going to set this team up in 2022 to be potentially really good with the starting five. And Fultz, too, is really another big key. Like Fultz has to take the next step, and he's played a lot better than he did in Philly. But I don't see this team making too many changes. But Fournier's got to go. We need to trade Vooch after this season when he's still got value, and we really need these guys that we've picked recently in the draft to develop. Isaac to me is the only sure thing out of this. But I do feel really good about Okeke and Fultz. Bamba, if he stays healthy, I think he can be really good. But that's the problem. Him staying healthy, and then got to draft a shooting guard this year. So that's how I've rebuilt the Magic. Kind of keeping a lot of things intact, not moving too much around. But Eric and Connor, what do you guys have to say about that?
I'll let you go first, Connor.
Okay, I mean, I think that's pretty good decisions. I mean, there's not, from like what I've seen too, is like the Magic don't really need to make too many changes to their team because I mean, they were already a playoff team this year. It's just more so about making those slight adjustments and slight improvements on what you can improve. I do agree that trading Vucevic should be a priority because Mo Bamba he's a rising star, and having. And it's like and the thing is,
they
Vucevic,
can get a lot for Vooch, like,
right?
He's
and you can get a lot for Vucevic because I mean he's really good too. But if you can, if Bamba can really step into that role as the five, then you can get a lot in return for a player like Nikola Vucevic. Like you said, as long as they don't hold on to him for too long, because after next season, then no one's gonna want him because like okay, well he's an aging guy and. He's got he's got like a really high contract. So like, do we really want him? So overall, like I said, I agree with the whole idea of not really making too many changes and just kind of focusing on bringing back a couple key players and developing others. I think that's a good strategy for the Magic.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I'd have to say, even if Evan Fournier does accept the player option, I would even be game to trying to trade him in the current season instead of letting him just play the 1 year and walk away. Like, see if you can
we just
get
don't
something for him.
Yeah, I'm just because other than Terrence Ross, we have no shooting guards right now. So they obviously have to draft a guard, but I think if Fournier comes back, I think we want to be somewhat competitive this year. I just don't know what we get in return for Fournier. I don't think we get anything good in value versus what he gives us for one season. But
Well, that's true. That's a good point. But yeah, I mean, overall, I feel like it's a solid set of moves. I think you're doing a great job of focusing on the short term, but then also setting up to get ready for the long term. And I think that's really what you need to do as a GM of a basketball team. So I think you're putting the Orlando Magic in a great situation with these moves here.
Hire this man.
Yeah. That's you just heard what I would do for the Magic. So now Connor and Eric are gonna talk about the Knicks. It's a bit tougher, but I'll let you guys try and help the Knicks out.
Yeah, where do we even begin is my first thing.
Yeah, seriously. I guess what I'll start with is looking at all of their impending free agents there. Who cares? They can all walk. There's not anybody there where it's like, oh man, we gotta
really hold on to this dude.
We gotta bring them back. I mean, what the Knicks need to do, in my opinion, I mean, obviously they don't have a Paul George and a Russell Westbrook like the Thunder had going into last season, but I mean, they need to do what the Thunder did and trade away as many of these contracts as possible. Because while they don't have anybody that's like a horrendous contract like a Nicholas Batum or Harrison Barnes or something like that, they don't have anybody like that, but they've got all of these guys that they're paying like $8 to $10 million a year for that, to me, just aren't that good. And when you add all of that up, it's just not a good combination, and then it limits you from being able to go after a big name in the future. So I don't know about you, Connor, though, but the one player though that I would definitely for sure, well, I guess two guys that I for sure would not want to trade would be Julius Randle for now and RJ Barrett. I think we need to keep them.
Yeah, that was going to be what I was going to say. Like when we were talking about potential like starting fives, like Randall and Barrett should be the two on the roster right now that are locked into their positions. Like Randall be the power forward and Barrett be the small forward. The rest of these guys, I mean, it's unfortunate for them that like I think obviously they don't have any horrendous contracts, but the fact that they're paying Taj Gibson $10 million a year when he's 35 years old seems a little bit high for me. And obviously he's not going to have any trade value being 35 years old, so they're going to be stuck with him for another year. But
yeah, he's not going anywhere.
Right. So I mean, and then obviously the Knicks, they unfortunately lost out for their sake in the draft lottery, only getting the 8th pick when, I mean, they didn't have the great, I mean, obviously they weren't like the Warriors and the Cavs and the Timberwolves when it came to getting the first pick, but they still had a decent chance at it. And to get number 8 was a little bit unfortunate for them, especially after they lost the lottery last year when they thought they were going to be number 1 and get Zion. So, I mean, I don't know about you. Like, I'm not sure what they should do with this pick. Like, I don't know if they're because I would say obviously, like, you should trade it, like, try and trade to get higher. But I don't think they have anything on the team that like would interest anybody. Like, unless you were to offer up Julius Randle, but it's like, do you really want to offer him up for a potential better draft spot?
No, yeah, I wouldn't think so. And yeah, but see, that's the thing. Maybe, I mean, obviously, Taj Gibson, we're screwed. We're stuck keeping him. But I don't know, like maybe some of these other younger guys, like maybe like a Dennis Smith Jr. or Alfred Payton or somebody that's not like really old or anything, but they still offer some value. Maybe you could offer one of them in the number 8 pick to get a higher spot, or even if you just trade them for future draft picks, because
like a higher first round pick next year or something like that.
Yeah, because the thing with like the Orlando Magic with Zach's build of that team, the Orlando Magic can have a short term because they do have good players and they could still have a chance to do some damage with what they have. But for a team like the Knicks, like we have to just strictly focus on long term building. Like there
Yeah,
is no short
we
term work.
we have to accept that we're probably going to suck for the next 2 years at
We're
least.
and not that we want to tank like like we talked about with like the other episode, but we got to start setting ourselves up for the future and get some young talent, get rid of some of these, contracts that aren't doing anything. Like we gotta, and not just only like what the Knicks have done in the past too, is they tend to go all in thinking they're going to get the, number one guy in free agency, and then they don't get them. And so then they're like, oh, well, let's just like what happened last year. Like, well, let's bring in Julius Randle and Taj Gibson, and they just start signing people for no reason. It seems like, and like they were rumored to get DeMarcus Cousins too. They didn't go out. They didn't end up getting him, but that would have been a move that wouldn't have helped them either. It's like they need to.
Mhm.
Their focus needs to be on acquiring draft picks and starting to win through the draft, and then maybe get like a solid piece or two in free agency along the way. So
Yeah, I
I
mean
don't know what else you had to add on here.
yeah, I mean it's definitely a situation where you have to look into the long term. I do think they would be, if they can. I mean, I'm not saying that they are likely to, because I honestly think he's going to stay in Toronto, but I do think it would be good for them if they could get Fred VanVleet, because then they could kind of parlay, like you said, using like Dennis Smith Jr. or Alfred Payton, since they're both point guards. They could parlay one of them into getting something more from a trade offer once you have that established point guard. Because when you have a point guard situation like they have, when I mean you have three below average point guards, it's like, well, we give up one, then we're just going to end up being screwed later in the game. So if they can get Fred VanVleet, I think that'd be good for them. But like looking through the rest of the free agent list, I mean, I guess they would be better served. I don't know what kind of centers are going to be around when they get to that point in the draft, but I think they'd be better served trying to draft a center rather than trying to get a free agent, because, I mean, the only really, in my opinion, like decent centers that are available right now, none of them are really worth it to me for them, because, yeah, Hassan Whiteside is going to be a free agent this year, but I just don't think, I think his price is going to be too high for the Knicks to really want to go after him. Marc Gasol is old and aging. Bismack Biyombo is not very good. Like, there's none of these guys on this center list. I mean, JaVale McGee's got a player option, which he's going to take. I mean, there's no question about that. Unless for some reason Andre Drummond decides to leave Cleveland, but I don't know if that would be a good move either. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of options for this team in the short term, other than like in free agency, other than Fred VanVleet. And then, like you said, after that, they just need to focus on, maybe trading some of these guys for draft picks and just really focusing on getting draft picks, and maybe stop worrying about thinking like, because like you said, I think that got them into trouble this past season when like, I guess I'll use an example before the draft. Like they were thinking in their heads, like, all right, we're going to get the number one draft pick, we're going to get Zion, and we're going to get KD in free agency. Like we're gonna go to the playoffs and do some damage this year. They need to get out of that mindset. Like, okay, you're not gonna win the NBA championship in the next 2 years. Like, like you said, not
Yeah.
tanking, but like just accept the fact that you're not going to, and start looking at the long term.
Yeah, and the thing is too is sometimes people say, "Oh, New York's a big market; they can attract a big name free agency." But the problem is you can't attract anybody good in free agency when you don't have anybody good on your team,
Right.
especially when in today's age you've got these players that want to team up with their friends and they want to buddy up and be a duo or a big three or whatever. When you don't have anybody on your team, you're not gonna attract anybody into the team. So if they can focus on getting some young talent and accumulate draft picks and get a solid team of young guys, then once they have that, they could probably attract a bigger name free agent within the next couple of years. But like they're not going to get Anthony Davis. I don't know who's any big name free agents for next year, but at the rate they're going, they're not going to get whoever's good then. So What I was looking at though,
they're not going to get Giannis.
Yeah, they're not going to get Giannis. Like when Kawhi is a free agent again, they're not going to get him. They're not going to get Steph. Like they're not going to get anybody. So one thing I was looking at here, just kind of as obviously this would not be a great move. I mean, this isn't going to like blow anybody away, but I liked your idea of drafting a center. But what I also think they could do, looking at the free agent list here, I don't know if he has any interest in leaving OKC or not, but they could probably for really cheap get Nerlens Noel to come in, probably get him for pretty cheap. You could have him temporarily start. He's not a scorer, but he's a solid defender. He's not going to hurt you. And then in the meantime, whatever center they draft, he could be the backup coming in off the bench and, learning, getting familiar with the team and everything. And then by the next year, you have the center we draft starting. You have Julius Randle at power forward. You got RJ Barrett at small forward. Maybe if they can make a trade or two, get some other solid pieces, then you at least have a few decent pieces. So you're still a competitive team. You're not tanking, but you still have a competitive team. You're still trying to set up that winning culture. Probably not going to be any good, but you set yourself, you take that first step in the right direction. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, I was looking over this list and I was trying to think in my head if they could maybe pull off something when you mentioned OKC, like if they could pull something off like OKC did where they traded away like Paul George and Russell Westbrook. But I think the way that OKC was able to get away with that was, yeah, obviously George and Westbrook were their best players and they got a lot for them, and the Knicks don't have anybody like that except for Julius Randle. But the other thing that the OKC had going for them was they still had, I mean, I know we all expected them to come in last place at the start of the season, but honestly, like they still had decent players. Like they had brought in Chris Paul through one of those trades. They still had Steven Adams. They still had Gallinari. They still had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's like, they still had
they got them in the trade for Paul George as well.
Right. It's like they still had decent people around them, and they got all these draft picks. Whereas with like the Knicks, if they trade away Julius Randle to like try and get draft picks and something, then they're really screwed because then they don't have anybody remotely good, it seems like, on the team unless RJ Barrett can really take that next step into becoming the next big thing. But yeah, I do like that. I hadn't considered looking at bringing in someone like Nerlens Noel or just like another kind of average, like you said, not going to hurt you center. Or maybe in their head, if I know Dwight Howard's supposed to be a free agent this offseason, if maybe they want to bring in Dwight Howard or somebody like that just for a season to mentor someone coming in, or like Joakim Noah, someone like that. That isn't, like you said, isn't going to.
I don't think the Knicks want Joakim Noah back after
probably not.
Contract they had, but I definitely get what you're saying, though.
Yeah, just kind of like I said, I like that idea of bringing in someone to mentor that new center, because that's definitely the biggest hole in their team right now is they don't have a big man, and that's a bit important. So, I'm not sure what else there is. Unfortunately, this is this is not a good situation.
Yeah. You can't do like a starting five like I did and have it be remotely.
Oh yeah,
real.
Well, I mean, it's like if you have to come up with a starting five on this team, then assuming that if they get Fred VanVleet, then if they go after him, then he'll be the starting point guard. But after that, it would be I don't know which one of these guys was the best out of them. Maybe Elfrid Payton was the best last year. I guess he's got the most experience. So I'll put Elfrid Payton at point guard, and then Wayne Ellington at shooting guard is definitely not ideal. Barrett at small forward. And then I don't know what you do. And then Randall at power forward, and then whoever they draft as the center to be the starting center. But it's a really terrible situation.
It's bad. It's bad.
We did the best we could, Knicks fans.
Yeah, you did pretty good. I'll give my critiques, and then Nate will give his. I would bring back Bobby Portis. Actually, he was one of the better players, and I would use him for trade bait. So what I would probably do,
sign and trade or something.
Well, he's got a club option, so just keep the club option.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But what I would really want to focus on is I don't think this draft is going to be good outside the top 5. So I would package 8 and Bobby Portis and Elfrid Payton or something like that to or even Kevin Knox, who's been kind of a disappointment. He's further down the salary list, but he's supposed to have. He was a first round pick from a couple of years ago. But trade like that package to get in the top five as best you can to number one, because I think the draft quality teeters off after 5 or 6. So I think eight's a really bad spot for them to be in the draft. I don't think they get anybody for the long term, like a long term star at number 8, and I think they really need to do that. So I think they need to trade up and try and get because they actually do have some draft picks in the future with Dallas because they for the Porzingis trade, so they have future Mavericks picks, so they can afford to maybe spend a little bit to trade up in the draft to get a franchise changing player there.
Well, it'd be like if they could trade up to get, in a way, if they could trade up to get like James Wiseman,
Yeah, that'd be if he were to fall to them because he might fall out of the top 3 potentially. So be there at 4 or 5 to try and get him. Like, yeah, I would want to trade out of 8. And yeah, the rest of the team, like you said, is tough. But they gotta. I think they need to get Van Vliet because I'm a fan of Van Vliet. I think he's a really good point guard. So I think that would be money well spent. But I agree with keeping Randall. You can't have Randall and Portis though, so that's why you trade Portis in that trade. And then throw R.J. Barrett, the rookie. I'd even consider whatever rookie they get. I'd consider starting him. And then have these scraps
Couldn't hurt,
play
right?
along. Yeah, I would have these scraps and sign some scraps for cheap. And then set themselves up for a potential future free agency where your attractive assets, the free agents, are hopefully the RJ Barrett's pretty good. Van Vliet, we know, is good. Randall's good. And then try and get another legit superstar to pair with that rookie. And then in a couple years, hopefully they'd be decent. I know I just made that sound super easy. It's not, but but that's the only thing that's different I would have done. But Nate, but overall, good job, guys. Nate, how did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty good. Some pretty good moves there. I mean, I've I've purposely not watched too much of Knicks basketball in the last year, so just
Me
because
neither.
they're so bad, I tried to avoid. So I don't really know, I'm not too well versed in the situation going on there, but I think those sound like some good moves. I think
Yeah.
obviously they need a lot of help there, and like you said, getting Van Vliet from Toronto would definitely be a good addition, and hopefully the draft works out favorably for them, so they can get some more young talent there. But yeah, as long as they can keep building around R.J. Barrett and Dennis Smith, and um, yeah, hopefully get something going on it going
Yeah.
there.
Not too much to support with the Knicks, but Twitter actually picked the Knicks. So Twitter won, or the Knicks won in the Twitter poll for who we should rebuild. So that's why we did the Knicks. Next week's episode, Eric's gonna take over the Thunder, and then we're gonna put 4 Western teams in a poll, and one of those bad West teams will get a rebuild from Connor and myself. So stay tuned for that. And then we'll be back next week with some more NFL talk as well. So, yeah, that's what we got planned for the future. Until then, guys, remember, be clutch.
Bye.
See ya.
Peace.